everybody. This is Brian, and I should have closed my door. And let's shed a little light on the situation. Welcome to another episode of Sitch Radio, the podcast. And for those of you new, this is more of a audio newsletter of what's going on in and around the studio and podcasting. And today we're going to talk about a podcast pitch. And a couple of reasons here. Number one is we have our second annual podcast pitch competition coming up, and we encourage everybody thinking about starting a podcast to head on over to sitchradio.com and sign up. There is a link in the show notes below, and start to formulate a podcast pitch. Now, to enter, this has to be a new show. It cannot be an existing podcast in production. So this is new ideas, new podcasters. You can be a seasoned podcaster and just want to pitch a new idea to enter a chance to win some of the awesome stuff we have coming up. And we'll get to that a little later. Right now, I want to talk about creating your podcast pitch. To do this effectively, in my opinion, you need to start with, what are we going to call this? What are we going to describe this? What's the mission statement for this show? And I'm huge on mission statements. And I suggest you start with the mission statement. And what do you want to convey to your audience? What do you want your audience to take away from the show each and every episode? And a couple of reasons I like the mission statement model is that it's going to help you make decisions. Should we interview this person? Well, does it support our mission? Does it support what we want our audience to hear, learn, take away from? So it's easy to make decisions down the road, but it really is a great foundation for your show. So once you have a mission statement established, then it's easy to describe the show, even if it's untitled to this point. But when you come to pitch your podcast, you should have a title, you should have a description, you should reference that mission statement. You can be as creative as you want. For the competition, if there's going to be two hosts, then both people need to be here for the pitch. And this is an in-person pitch here at Sitch Radio in Irvine, California. So if you are around the nation and want to participate, shoot me an email and we'll chat about it and what we may be able to do to get your submission in. The judges will all be here in person. You will pitch in front of a panel of judges that we've put together. The majority of is Sitch Radio personnel. We do have a couple invitations out for seasoned hosts of shows, just so you're aware. And it's a fun time. It's a fun day. It's interesting for us as judges to sit back and hear these pitches and the ideas. And they're not ideas, they're yours. We don't need ownership of your show. We're not looking for any of that. But let's get back to that title. So in your title for your show, you want it to be understood what the show is about. So for example, on Feed Drops, we just reviewed an episode of the Paranoid Style podcast. Paranoid Style, okay, that's interesting. It intrigued me enough to read their description. And it's two ladies that discuss conspiracy theories from their point of view, and they do it in such an entertaining way. But that title was catchy enough to make me want to learn more. So, and the paranoid fits in with the whole conspiracy theory. So it made sense to me. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons I chose an episode of the Paranoid Style podcast to include in the Feed Drops podcast, which is hosted by Linz Florin and myself. So that title, you really need to put some thought into it. And I encourage everybody to go to iTunes Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, take a look at the titles you're thinking about and put them in the search bar. Are there any other shows titled the same way, close to the same way? Is your title descriptive enough to set you apart from other shows that might have a similar title? I encourage you to read their descriptions. What can you do better? I encourage you to look at their artwork. You want your art to pop. You want your art to stand out within the category amongst all the other podcast art. So these are things I encourage all my hosts to do. But doing that little bit of research within your category and within podcasting as a whole off those two platforms, it's going to help you formulate a title, description, and art that stands out. And that's the trick to get your show noticed, is you need to stand out. You need to be a little different. Not to say you can't do, local news, or you can't do conspiracy theory, but you want to stand out. What's different about your show than others, descripted enough to where people are going to want to at least listen to your latest episode and judge whether they're going to take their time to subscribe to your show and be in their ear weekly, hopefully weekly. So in my opinion, that's the foundation. Come up with your mission statement, come up with that title, come up with a great description, and think about the art. Now, if you're entering the pitch competition, you don't need your art finalized by the time you pitch. If you're going to do the podcast, whether you win or not, by all means, include your art in your pitch. It might make you stand out from somebody else pitching. So keep that in mind. You want to be memorable in the minds of the judges judging all the pitches that we're going to receive this day. We already have people signing up, which is awesome, exciting. The pitch competition is going to be the 30th of July. So there's plenty of time to get together and bounce your ideas off your circle of influence, and or find a collaborator you might want to work with hosting the show, working on the show. This can be branded content for a company. This would be a great Kickstarter to get your show started. This could be a hobbyist show. It can be whatever. We don't specify what category we're looking for. We just want enthusiastic hosts that want to podcast and utilize this pitch competition as a catalyst to get you going. Again, whether you win or lose. Now, if you win, the cool thing is you are going to receive 8 recording sessions here in studio at Sitch Radio. Linz Florin, who I mentioned earlier from Growth Podcast Network. I always mess that up. Sorry, Linz. He's going to create an original piece of music for your show, which is phenomenal. You don't even have to worry about music licensing. You will then have your choice of a piece of equipment that we're bringing in. And all this is outlined at sitchradio.com on the submit or the podcast pitch competition page. Second place will have their choice of the remaining items, hardware. Third place, well, you get what's left over, but you walk away with the experience of having pitched your podcast and a piece of equipment to help you podcast. So another good thing a lot of people don't think about, if you do start this show, having your pitch dialed in is phenomenal. That way, if podcasting comes up in conversation and people realize you have a show, your pitch is down. You're going to be able to rattle off what your show is about quickly and hopefully get their attention to want them to subscribe. And don't be shy. Grab your phone, open up your podcast app. Here's my show. Hit that subscribe button. Gain those followers any way you can. So let me check my list and make sure I covered everything I want to cover. And I tell you what, why I do that, I am going to throw up a link to Feed Drops. If you're unfamiliar with Feed Drops, and it's Growth Network Podcasts, I'll get it right one day, Linz. If you have a show and would like to submit it to Feed Drops, click on this link that's on the screen. If you're watching on Bullhorn on a PC, Mac, or in their mobile app, you'll be able to click on this and go straight to the Feed Drops show. Feed Drops is a show where we highlight 2 shows a week. I choose one, Linz chooses one. We play clips that were catchy to us, and we discuss, the clips and the show. There's no cost to it. And, it's another great way to get your show out in front of a new audience, which is kind of cool. And I got all excited about that, and I'm not checking my list. Blah, 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 blah. We are good to go. Um, Enough of feed drops. If you are in the Orange County, California area and thinking about podcasting, I encourage you to join our meetup. It is Podcasting at Sitch Radio. We have monthly in-person meetings here at the studio, and we discuss some facet of podcasting. Typically, I like to do them once a quarter. However, I haven't lately. We do a roundtable where you can talk about a problem you're having, and everybody in attendance can chime in and talk about their experience with that issue and how they overcame it. And we call that the Podcasters Roundtable. And it's a really cool time to hear all these different opinions and approaches to solving problems, which is really cool. And that is the meetup. One last not so shameless plug here. I encourage all my hosts to grow their online presence offline. And we have facilitated Brews in Business. It is a meetup group. I also post our events on Alignable, sometimes Facebook and LinkedIn, but we come together as a group in person. We bounce from brewery to brewery in the Orange County area, and we, have a nice beer, handcrafted, and get to meet some new and interesting people. The last one we did was just a couple of days ago on Wednesday, and we actually had new people from Alignable joining the group, which was awesome. It's always nice to meet new people and hear about what they do. And look, this isn't a salesy networking event. We are not there to sell to each other. We are there to talk about what we do and hopefully get referrals from other people in attendance. We want our network working for us. So keep that in mind. It's been a fun time. Next week, we are going to be at Left Coast Brewing in Irvine. Left Coast was originally down south. They now have an Irvine location, so we are excited about that. And that's about it for this episode of Sitch Radio. If you are thinking about starting a podcast, head on over to Sitch. We've got some great resources there for you to help you get started. And of course, we're always here to help. You can sign up for a free consultation, and we can talk about what it is you want to do, whether it's in studio or online, and hopefully help you tell your story. That's our mission. Sitch Radio is here to help you tell your story. With all of that having been said, we are going to end the show for the day. We appreciate you all listening and would love for you to follow us on social media. Those links are also in the show notes below. We are Sitch Radio, SITCH Radio on all platforms. We encourage you to follow us on the platform of your choice.